Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back for episode 5 of Can You Beat Pokemon Red with a Single Weedle? Last week we took down Koga and beat our rival in Giovanni in Silphco after a ton of grinding. It's about to get real this episode as we have some awful gym leader matchups, so let's just dive right in. So at this point in the game, we can either take on Sabrina, the Psychic type gym, or Blaine, the Fire type gym. Both are bad matchups for us, and both have special attacking moves, which is our Weedle's worst stat. Although Blaine's Pokemon are a higher level, I decided to go after his gym first, but not before grinding. To get to Cinnabar Island, where Blaine's gym is, we have to surf either west of Fuchsia or south of Pallet Town, and there's a bunch of trainers just kind of floating in the water. I'm sure you've learned by now that I'm going to take both routes and level up as much as possible and get both money and experience, but really money. We are super low on cash and every important battle costs us a ton of money because we have to use several items. So as I'm training up our buff little Weedle, let's talk about what's left after this training session. I touched on it last episode a bit, but now we can really dive in. We have 3 gym badges left to get. That may seem like a ton, but there's not a whole lot of battles left in the game. We have Blaine, Sabrina, and Giovanni's gym, all of which only require 1 extra battle to get through. Then we have Rival 6, Victory Road, and the Elite 4. And that's it. So this point in the game really is our last chance to level up before it gets real. And speaking of this getting real, Episode 6 is going to be the last episode of this series. I've been trying to keep these episodes around 10 minutes, but the final episode is going to be mostly the Elite 4, so it seems sort of weird to chop that up into pieces. I haven't started on that video yet, but it might be a bit of a double feature so to speak because I can't imagine it's going to be a smooth experience. But for now, I've had enough grinding, so it's time for the Cinnabar Gym. The plan here is to fight every trainer for the experience and the money. It's not a fun plan however because we don't want to use any items unless we have to. Let's take a look at the first burglar trainer battle here who has Pokemon in their mid-30s and we are almost 60. He starts with Growlithe and as you can see, we do a decent amount of damage, but the problem is how much damage we're taking in return. We make it through Growlithe and then Vulpix comes out. Vulpix hits with Flamethrower and yeah, look at that damage. From an unevolved Pokemon 25 levels lower than us. Then for the second attempt, I decide to see what happens if I do use an X special. Growlithe hits us with a crit which isn't optimal at all and by the time we knock it out, we're down 100 HP. I healed against the Vulpix after being taken down to 1 HP. It responds with 2 more flamethrowers for a total of 100 damage again, and there's just nothing we can do against Ninetales. So this is exactly what I was worried about. We don't have money to dump into items, and we don't want to do that anyway since we need a lot of money for the endgame. I could grind to a crazy high level and that may need to happen eventually, but what we're gonna do is use our rare candies that we've been collecting. I have 9 of them right now, so that will boost Weedle all the way to level 68. I was hoping to save them for the last possible moment, but honestly, this might be that moment. So with our newfound power, let's check out that burglar battle again. You can see right away that we take much less damage and we knock it out in 2 hits, granted they were both critical hits. Vulpix comes out and we get another critical hit, so that's 3 crits in a row and I will take it. But the Vulpix flamethrower still hurts, but we're in better shape for the Ninetales. For Ninetales, it looks like it's going to be about a 5-hit KO and it hits us pretty hard, forcing us to heal. Then we trade a couple critical hits, but we have enough HP to win the fight. The nice thing about these burglar trainers is that they give out a ton of money for winning, so even though we used an item, it's still a net gain on cash. And now we're going to skip to Blaine. The rest of the trainers were mostly more of the same, and Blaine is what we all want to see, so let's just do it. The first attempt with Blaine is kind of a feeling out process, so I don't use any items. His team has Growlithe, Ponyta, Rapidash, and Arcanine. The interesting thing about Blaine though is he has 2 super potions per Pokemon and is programmed to use them 25% of the time, even if he doesn't need them. So there's a little bit of RNG that can help us if he wastes a few turns, but it's obvious from this first battle that we're gonna have to buff in some fashion because his Growlithe just does too much damage and we just don't do enough. We also get burned and that's gonna play a major role in this battle going forward. So for the second attempt, I go for 4 X attacks before attacking, and Blaine does a decent job wasting turns. Between using potions that aren't needed and agility, he gives us a bit of an opening to use items, which is nice. And right before we knock it out, Growlithe burns us. He sends out Ponyta next, but once we're burned, it cuts our attack in half and hurts us every turn, which really isn't something we can afford. So although we do get past Ponyta, his evolved Pokemon are next, starting with Rapidash. And as you can see, our Poison Sting is doing maybe 10%, and after a few turns we faint. So now I'm messing with the strategy a little bit, and this time I'm gonna go with 2 X specials and 3 X attacks. This should be enough for us to 2-shot Growlithe, and he plays along nicely, only hitting us once while we set up. We do knock it out in 2 hits, and we still have 161 HP left. Ponyta should also be a 2-hit KO, but we're going to be introduced to a new problem now, which is Fire Spin. So Fire Spin stops us from attacking for 2 to 5 turns, and it hits us for 12 damage every turn. Luckily we did poison Ponyta, so at least we're hurting it with some poison damage every turn while we just can't do anything. Once we knock it out, we're still doing okay on HP, and we aren't burnt for Rapidash. Our Poison Sting does decent damage, but Rapidash heals up, and now we can see Blaine cheat a little bit. So we're locked into Fire Spin, and Blaine shouldn't be able to do anything either, but he uses a Super Potion and still attacks with Fire Spin, which shouldn't be possible, but you know, Gen 1. After taking a couple more Fire Spins and being forced to heal, we do eventually get past Rapidash with almost full health, so we're in good shape for Blaine's last Pokemon, which is Arcanine. We're doing pretty good damage, and Arcanine misses, which allows us to take it down to half health and poison it after a pretty weak Ember. We knock it down to red health now, and he uses Fire Blast, which crits us and knocks us out all the way from green health. Man, I'm not gonna lie, that one hurt. And it hurt so bad that the very next attempt, Blaine decided to do it again. We take another critical hit Fire Blast to knock us out, and I tried this battle probably 10 more times, and every time I fell to the Arcanine. We're so close, but something small needs to change. And that change is going to be twofold. First of all, we're leveling up mid-fight, which resets our badge boosts. So the first order of business is going to be starting the battle at level 69, and honestly, I've kind of been holding Weedle back a little bit. Remember in Dragon Ball Z where King Kai told Goku not to use the Kaioken or he would destroy his body? Well, we've only been using 5 X attacks and X specials, so we're gonna not listen to King Kai right now and buff up Weedle to the max. Now let's see how this goes. We nearly one-shot Growlithe and it barely hurts us, and we actually do get the one-shot on Ponyta. Rapidash looks like it'll be a 2-shot, but Blaine decides to heal it before we can knock it out, but we don't take a single hit, and lastly is Arcanine. We start off with decent damage, but our second attack is a crit, so that's not the best luck for us. Arcanine's attacks though are doing almost nothing, and after a few turns we cruise to a victory. So essentially the key to this battle is using 6 X attacks and just avoiding burn. So now that we've gotten our 6th badge against Blaine, let's make our way back to Saffron for Sabrina and her psychic Pokemon. I went into the first battle just looking to test her Pokemon out. She starts with Kadabra, and we do just under half with Poison Sting and take a Psybeam that hits us pretty hard. We get a poison on our next Poison Sting and take another Psybeam before knocking it out with 34 HP left. Mr. Mime is up next and I heal up, and I realize at this point that we can probably win. Mr. Mime doesn't have the best moveset and it can't really one-shot us, so I use this opportunity to start buffing up our Weedle. We do take a critical hit Confusion, but I finish buffing and heal up. After the buff, his Confusions are doing almost nothing, and even though he raised his defense, we're doing more than enough to take it out easily. Sabrina uses Venomoth next, and we do just under half damage with a Poison Sting. Its attacks barely hurt though, so we knock it out after 3 hits, and lastly we have Alakazam. Our Poison Stings do just under half again, and Alakazam uses Psywave, which is just a terrible move, but Sabrina is committed to using it, and we get to knock out Alakazam a couple turns later. That was surprisingly easy, and honestly, if we used one more X attack, it would have made those 3-hit KOs 2-hit KOs, so that went much better than Blaine. Let's see if we can keep up this hot streak and get our 8th and final badge against Giovanni. Giovanni starts with a level 45 Rhyhorn, and we're changing up the strategy a little bit for this one. Giovanni's Pokemon are going to use physical moves, and they hurt, as his Pokemon have super high attack stats. So we're going to start by using X Defend first to lower the damage we take. I use 3 of them and then go for Poison Sting. It's obviously weak right now, but we want to poison Rhyhorn before we continue our buffs, that way we can do some passive damage. And once we do finally get the poison, I finish up buffing our Weedle. So we have used 6 X attacks and 6 X defense. Rhyhorn's health is pretty low at this point, so I just top off our health while the poison leaves him with a sliver, and then we can use one last Poison Sting to knock it out, and we're at full HP. Giovanni uses Dugtrio next, and we come just short of a 1-hit KO. Dugtrio uses Sand Attack, which lowers our accuracy, which is beyond annoying, but I have faith we're going to be okay, even though we do miss a few more attacks before finishing it off. We have Nidoqueen next, and our Poison Stings are doing very little considering how roided out we are right now. Nidoqueen uses Tail Whip, which lowers our defense, and a Scratch, which barely does anything, and we get to finish it off. After Nidoqueen, we have Nito King. This fight was incredibly annoying, but not because of Nito King at all. It uses Thrash a bunch, which is totally fine, but that sand attack we took makes us miss so much, and forces us to heal in the middle of this battle when we probably wouldn't have had to, but we eventually knock it out without much of a scare. As for Giovanni's final Pokemon, Rhyhorn, it's just more of the same. We are super buffed, but our attacks aren't hitting all that hard, and we're forced to heal again during the fight. We miss a few more times thanks to the sand attack, but eventually we knock it out, and that's all 8 badges. Now this episode is already a little long, but I want to focus on the Elite Four all next episode, so let's take down our rival just before Victory Road. And on the way to our rival, we get a random battle against the level 4 Nidoran, but we showed it absolutely no mercy. And now for the rival fight. The rival leads off with Pidgeot, and because the rival has good AI, it's going to use either agility or wing attack since they're both super effective. This makes Pidgeot not too horrible to set up against since it will waste some turns using agility. I spaced out a little and forgot to buff, so I had to heal up, but after that, I started to do our buffs for this battle. We're going to start with X specials though, because we don't want to take too much damage from those wing attacks. I'm not messing around this fight, we're going to go full Super Saiyan again with 6 X specials and 6 X attacks. And once we're ready to attack, we take a critical hit wing attack, which hurts, but I use this opportunity to use the last 3 super potions I had laying around before we knock it out with full HP. Our rival's Rhyhorn is up next, and it's just a long battle full of nothing. He can't hurt us all that much, but we can't hurt it much either because of its super high defense. We trade turns exchanging body blows, but I got a poison eventually, so we whittle it down in a long, boring fight. Next up, we have Execute, and I start by healing. Execute takes in Sunlight to use Solar Beam, but that's a 2-turn move, and he only has 1 turn to live as we one-shot it. That sounded kinda dark. Was that dark? Oh well, we level up to 71 and the rival uses Gyarados. We start off with a critical hit, which isn't the best. Gyarados uses Bite, which doesn't do much, and a couple poison stings is all it takes to knock it out. I was curious to see how much damage a Hydro Pump would have done, but maybe in the next battle. The rival uses Alakazam next, and we get it all the way down to red health, and the rival uses a regular potion. Yes, a regular potion. The ones that restore 20 HP. Why does he even have those? That's not going to be enough to save it, so we have Charizard last. Our first Poison Sting does decent damage, and Charizard uses Flamethrower. After seeing how little that Flamethrower does, we can pretty much assume the battle is over barring a critical hit, but the rival doesn't get one, so that's the fight. Alright, this episode's already a little longer than I intended, but we have all 8 badges and beat up on the rival. The only thing left is the Elite Four, so don't forget to tune in next week for the finale. And also during next week's episode, I'll be announcing my next challenge, and it's brutal. So make sure to tune in for that, and I will catch you all for the finale. Peace.